They want to kill all 395 birds. Well, I plan to save all 394 of them.
This isn't funny to make fun of a farmer's plight over Thanksgiving.
If everybody had the time to educate themselves in the matters that we're fighting for, they would be focused on that, because this is going to have an effect for our children and our grandchildren and a ripple effect for generations to come.
Well, I wish I was bringing you good news. Instead, I'm exposing fake news, which we do often at Rebel News. This time, it's, of course, about the CBC and other mainstream media who have upped their propaganda game in a new smear campaign against universal ostrich farmers. For those of you who have been following our many reports at SaveTheOstriches.com, you know that's the multi-family run farm in Edgewood, British Columbia, that's currently at a standoff with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that has seized their herd of hundreds of healthy ostriches and seized much of theirs and their neighbors' land after they raced to the farm to try to beat the farm by killing their birds before the farm could go through the Supreme Court to try to fight the cull order. Now, they failed. That's why there's a standoff right now as we wait for the Supreme Court to decide on whether or not the farmers can pursue more in the Supreme Court. Would you know, or would you be surprised, probably not, to learn that ever since the farm got that stay order, it has been a drastic change in the mainstream media campaign against the farmers. And the icing on the cake is what CBC's 22 Minutes just put out. It was a Beijing-style comedy piece where tax-paid-for comedians poke fun at the farmers' plight, trying to turn public opinion against them. Because, you know, if the courts actually allow this cull order to happen, then the public has to think it should happen, right? I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. I think the best way to address this is to go ahead and sort of watch it. It's only 2 minutes long, and do a couple of interruptions to explain why this propaganda is so horrible. And then we'll hear from Katie Pisitny herself. She is with Universal Ostrich Farm. She grew up with the birds. She's their spokesperson. She's one of 2 farmers who were arrested for trying to care for the birds before the CFIA did.
The Supreme Court has delayed a planned execution of nearly 400 ostriches in British Columbia after an avian flu outbreak. For more, I'm joined by ostrich farmer Elwood Coburn. Good evening.
Oh, hello. That's all right, girl. It's okay. Shh. That's okay. That's okay. Shh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is your ostrich all right?
Oh, yeah, Bessie, she's all right. Just a bit scared because of all the media attention. That and a touch of bird flu. Ah!
A touch of bird flu? How about none? You see, none of these birds, hundreds of them, have ever actually been tested for the bird flu. The CFIA keeps refusing to test them. Instead, it wants to kill the entire flock based on 2 deceased carcasses last year, 10 months ago, testing positive with overcycled PCR tests. Now, some of the herd did die from whatever illness swept through them late last year, less than 15%. But the farmers have consistently said, why are we killing the healthy and asymptomatic ones, now over 270 days healthy?
Ah, are you okay? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, to be expected. There, that's a good girl. That's a good girl. That's a good girl.
I think that ostrich is sick.
Bessie? No, she's not sick. She's just an arsehole.
The Canadian Food Inspection Agency says the ostriches need to be destroyed. They allege that you haven't been taking good care of the birds.
How dare they? What's this country coming to if a man can't keep to himself and raise 400 ostriches? I'm not going to stand by with my head in the sand. The CFIA has these birds worried sick. Thanksgiving was just the other day, and these ostriches were so upset they barely touched their turkey.
Ha 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 ha. It's not a man raising the ostriches, it's families. This is their livelihood. The birds are their property. And this is what they're dealing with in Thanksgiving, having to look at the CFIA with their herd, and also look above them as RCMP swirls around them with their drones. They have zero privacy over Thanksgiving, not to mention the amount of resources we're paying for this operation to continue happening. I would estimate it's hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. Meanwhile, extortion shootings keep happening in Surrey. They've got Surrey RCMP deployed, and from elsewhere. This isn't funny to make fun of a farmer's plight over Thanksgiving. But nevertheless, it's the CBC.
Okay, but some famous American politicians have gotten involved. Robert Kennedy Jr. has asked for the birds to be studied, not killed. Dr. Oz offered to rehome the birds on his Florida ranch.
That's right. Except it's not just some famous politicians. It's the United States top medical health officials who have said, Canada, what the heck are you doing killing these birds? Because if you didn't know, in the last few years, they're not for human consumption. No, the farmers tapped into a very promising industry in therapeutic antibody research because ostrich eggs are full of antibodies. The farmers believe, with the scientists in Japan, that they neutralize COVID-19. And when they pitched it to Canada during lockdowns, would it surprise you to know that Canada wasn't very interested in this research, but they're certainly interested in killing it now that the farmers say, hey, wait, if these birds have avian flu, that means they're in the prime position for us to do the same thing with that virus and help fight that flu so you don't have to keep culling animals for no reason. But I guess that doesn't make Big Pharma very happy, since their answer to everything, of course, is to get a vaccine.
Florida? What do you think we are, nuts? Busy as bird flu, not mad cow disease.
Okay, but the court order says that since the outbreak began, some 70 ostriches have died. And didn't another ostrich die just last week?
Here you go. What malicious framing that was. You see, the CBC is not bringing you the fair side of the story. Propaganda doesn't necessarily lie to you. It convinces you to lie to yourself. So the CBC knows all well that, just like I told you, but they're not, that bird that died last week had nothing to do with an illness. It was injured, and then we published evidence that it was then neglected by the CFIA when the farmers couldn't care for it and likely died of dehydration. And that's despite the farmers begging to give them life-saving electrolytes. That bird's name was Spirit. It is dead, and it is sickening to see the CBC mislead the public into thinking that Spirit died from the avian flu.
Well, we still have 399 healthy ostriches. That's 398 birds who have nothing wrong with them. There's 397 birds with a right to live, and if the government has their way, there won't be 396 birds left. They want to kill all 395 birds. Well, I plan to save all 394 of them. Bessie! Bessie! Bessie girl, talk to me! Mouth to beak!
Is she?
Bessie! 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 Ah!
Good luck with the case.
Now, maybe there's some of you watching saying, calm down. Haven't you ever seen a joke? This is comedy. No, this is the type of comedy that would make communist China's Xi Jinping smile. This is the type of comedy that wants you to laugh now and think later, or think never, about what the implications to Canada really is if this flock of healthy ostriches is slaughtered when they shouldn't be, and when they hold the key, potentially, to preventing other livelihoods and farms from being shut down. Now, you saw the red herring where they're focusing on the numbers. I'm actually going to talk to Katie, because the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has since come out and said there are 300 to 330 birds, according to their account. And we're going to talk to the farmer about why that is different than the 400 I've previously reported on that they believe they had, and more about what the mainstream media has really been throwing at the farms since they got their stay order. But first, let's get Katie's response to what you just watched.
Tell me what goes through your mind when you watch that.
You know, I guess as the humble farmers we are, it's good to find comedy and laughter in some moments. And so I want to just hope that that's what this was intended to do. It is a big fight. And we've garnered a lot of really important attention for important reasons. And that's because the Canadian government's failing to see the potential that others are seeing. CBC and mainstream media had been very good at the beginning in taking a very unbiased approach, really covering this story both ways. And then when we got this last Supreme Court ordered stay, while we're waiting to hear from the Supreme Court, they took a biased approach, and we don't really understand that. And an aggressive approach, calling us extremists and really focusing on violence and saying that just because other people have, got threatened, that is our kind of, they're letting that overshadow the direct message here. That has been so clear from day one of what we're fighting for. And that is sad. That is sad for me. It's sad for our family, and it's sad for all the supporters who continue to pour in their dedication, time, and their passion towards seeing that animals, their voices that don't have voices, that they survive. This is a life versus death, science versus speculation. And if everybody had the time to educate themselves in the matters that we're fighting for, they would be focused on that, because this is going to have an effect for our children and our grandchildren, and a ripple effect for generations to come.
I think that many are focusing on it. I personally think that's why we're seeing, 22 Minutes do a Beijing style comedy skit, if you will, about your response to it is how you guys have been this whole time so gracious up until very recently. You were always giving the CFIA the benefit of the doubt, it would seem, in your approach, and only till recently, as it gets more ridiculous, are you saying, you know what, the whole agency needs to be dismantled.
You know what, Drea, you've been on the farm. And you've spent a lot of time here with us, and you've spent a lot of time witnessing these beautiful prehistoric creatures that have been parts of our family for decades. You've witnessed our care and compassion firsthand for these animals, and you've witnessed what we're fighting for. I think that's hard for a lot of people who sit behind a TV screen and they're watching things that are coming at them, which leads us to the count of our animals.
Right.
And I do want to address that, because I can say, which I always have been proud to say about mistakes, but my mom, here we are caught up in this flurry of animals and counts, and why, it's been very clear messaging, 400. And we had, so there was over 400 when this started, and 69 died.
Right.
They did.
Which I should add, for people who are just following along, you've consistently said that some people think you guys pretend that 69 didn't die. That skit tries to act like the recent bird Spirit that died was ill, which we've seen being pushed. But continue on. 69 died.
Yeah, died from, so they died from something. Again, you can't have 2 PCR tests that didn't even have a chance to make it to an accredited lab in Winnipeg, make it there and test positive for H5N1 when we were tested. They said we tested positive for H5N1 at a non-accredited lab. So this was PCR test done off 2 animals. Further studies have shown that, and in 2020, we had something come through our farm as well. But when we dealt with our vet, he did the proper testing, the gold standard sampling, and that was tissue samples. Those tissue samples came back positive for Pseudomonas bacteria. It is speculation, but scientists are really starting to show that there's a very large possibility that birds are dying from Pseudomonas bacteria, which is a byproduct of avian influenza, and which is not reportable, and they're dying with avian influenza. Now, Dr. Pellick is a perfect example. He's one of our expert witnesses, and he's a super accredited scientist and immunologist. He goes into good depths with this. So if we ever want to do a little bit with him on that, I think it'd be fantastic. But let's go back to the number. So we had the 400, just over 400. And then we had 69 die. So that in April, our count, when you go into our fields and stuff, because what we're really worried about right now is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency possibly breaking an interim stay order with some numbers of our ostriches missing. So again, this is speculation. We're trying to work through this. 69 died. My mom said to me, no, Katie, I kept the count it was almost 400, but the 69 who died that was off the number of 400. So that makes sense. That is our 331 that we're at. Spirit died. That is the one bird so that's where the government of Canada, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency on their website says 300 to 330. And that is the numbers, right? We had the 2 birds that were shot. Yeah. We've had one that slipped on the ice through the winter, and she broke her leg. And that was documented with Canadian Food Inspection Agency. When we had drones flying over, again, at one of the times, we had a rooster hit the post and unfortunately had an injury to his head. That bird, he died. So she's like, there was injuries to do with the drones. There was injuries, there was to do with the shots that they were shot.
My next report will be with Dr. Pellick. I've interviewed him about this case before, and I just finished interviewing him, actually. So stay tuned for that. I did look back at some previous stories when you guys had a fire near you, and you said 500. So it does look like you're rounding up, which I get the whole rounding up. You're not going to know or say exactly the number, but consistently, even myself was telling people 400 after the birds. So there is a big shift now to say, okay, 70 are gone, or the 70 were part of it, but you're saying as a spokesperson and your mom is saying as a farm, two different things, and that I can see.
So we have to clear that up. So it's the 400, the 69 came off that 400 who died. And then when we went through the fires, we had a larger number, a way higher number, because then we were still selling breeder packs and stuff and building up our program for the antibody research. So that's absolutely right. We still had sales back then. We've been cut off everything now for 10 months. But again,
let's pause there just for a minute too. Because this is something I get all the time. I get ridiculous pictures in comments and people telling me, Drea, these birds are not for scientific research. I followed the cases. I know they were in the last handful of years. But what do you make of these people constantly? It's almost like a red herring, making a big deal at that. At some point, the farm sold the ostriches for meat, and I believe ostrich oil as well, and more recently shifted. Tell us that timeline and your response to those complaints.
Absolutely. How does that affect a family that has been put under the most scrutiny and attacked by the Canadian government, in which we're trying to stand up for Canadians? We are just an average family that is trying to challenge everything at once. We are balancing my dad, who's a paraplegic, in the house. We have many supporters pouring in, and we're very caring and hospitable to them as well. We're a very warm home, and we're trying to deal with, we've went through a few lawyers. We're with we're trying to, it's a lot of work. The messages, keeping up with messages of gratitude to people who continue to pour in support. But we did, from years ago, we don't ever deny being involved with ostrich meat. We don't deny selling oil and actually having a pet line that was getting animals off antihistamines, more big pharma products. They were growing their hair back and they were off drugs, and all they had to do was take ostrich oil every day. It was beautiful to watch these pets thrive and get off big pharma pills, veterinary, dependencies. And then we had the meat is low in cholesterol, high in protein. It is a super healthy red meat that diabetics can eat. Then there is the ostrich oil, and it's great for burn victims and scars, psoriasis and eczema and acne. It is extremely healing. Now, nobody likes to see their animals be processed, but when ours were, everything was so humane. And I know some people just don't like that, and that's okay. But every farmer, a good farmer, you love your animals, no matter what, they're your family. So when COVID happened, it was a dream come true when we fell into the antibody research and went, wow, this is great. They could live the longest lives. They lived up to 70 years old. We get to use their eggs and we get to have all of them forever. This is perfect. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we deviated our time, our focus. We put it onto the antibody research, and it's been one of the best things we've ever got to be involved in. However, it's been shadowed with, the questions now. It's like, who do you call when you're abused by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, yet you're not for food consumption? Mm-hmm. We're not a commercial poultry facility. Where do you go when the system itself is the aggressor? What do you do? How do you defend your rights? when the law is meant to protect you works against you. And that's even today. It was like, who do you call when the RCMP has been hired to protect the Canadian Food Inspection Agency? Like, you can't call 911 because they're all here. And it's just you put this in this really weird position. So again, we're focused on so many more things now that even some of these things, like you say, that people are talking about and making the focus on, like, did we sell meat? And these animals aren't our pets. We killed them years ago. It doesn't mean we haven't loved the ones that have been processed. It doesn't mean that we didn't keep all of our elder ostriches. That's where we have our 20s and our 30s. But we did have young animals, young roosters, and that came into our system that had to be processed. And we used the animal to its fullest potential for human and animal health.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm even asking you these questions.
Right.
You were already forthcoming with me, because we covered this months ago and you talked about how they used to be for a nice red meat, you said. But I don't get why people don't realize that that's what farmers do and they keep trying to hold it against you. But it's gotten to the point, because of mainstream media, focusing and nitpicking on these things like the count not being specific. It's totally pushing people away from the point here, which is farming rights, food rights, property rights is a big thing. Not just you guys, your neighbors who are also.
How can an agency come in and seize your property? How can an agency come in and seize your animals? How can an agency come in and seize your neighbor's property without them knowing? How can this happen? And that is what the questions we're trying to solve here for all Canadians. How can this happen? And the policy that is so broken, and this is more about the policy failure. It's about the psychological warfare that they're using on us as a family, but not just us as a family, but Canadian families and farmers. This is just, the picture is so much bigger. And at the end of the day, do we all want to see these healthy ostriches that have lived decades be slaughtered for no reason and murdered, or do we want to see them alive?
Whenever they come at you, they can't go after the ostriches. Everybody's rooting for the ostriches. They can call you Meg or whatever they try. Yes. And I saw the shift. I saw in person while I was there, the odd mainstream media have tears in their eyes. When you guys got granted that stay, I remember seeing, I don't know who she worked for, but she had tears in her eyes. And I could see that people were genuinely concerned from the mainstream media, and there has been a total shift. I can tell that they've been ordered to go after you guys. And I want to give one more example so people really do notice and can stop emailing me about this kind of stuff. But they really see how hard our state media is working against a family, farmers. I'm glad you mentioned your father's a paraplegic. You guys are so humble. You don't talk about that a lot, but
we don't.
And how you guys have to also, help him and care for him, and how stressful it is for you to be barricaded against your birds. And now you're concerned about the count because you can't see them. I'm going to look at the evidence before I really talk about that in case anybody's wondering. And I will come up with, what I see from that situation. But right now we're tackling the propaganda. And I want to give one more shameful example of the mainstream media. We have this article on the screen here where they basically went after your farm or your mom's farm and Dave's farm for being in debt. And if you read this article, they basically say it's like they're trying to get the public to root for the call, to root for the killing of still hundreds of birds, even by the CFIA count, still 300 birds. And they're saying root for them so they can pay their debts. What was going through your mind when you saw that article, and what, it's embarrassing that you have to talk about it, but what can you say about it?
Heartbreaking. Again, never once. Who isn't in debt? Especially when you're a pioneer in an industry trying to bring something so substantial to the market that could be so amazing for humanity. Who isn't in debt? We've never denied having debt. Ask us. Absolutely. But again, we've never denied those people asking or going for money. We've never denied them their money. They knew that when we made our contracts and everything came together, that they were getting paid. Everything is out in the open, and we're happy to say that they would be the first to be paid. Even if there was any compensation, we are those people. They would be paid. That would be no question. And again, we just want to say this isn't about money. We could be offered so much money. Now this is about what this stands for. But it was heartbreaking that it all became about money and turning the focus towards creditors. It just didn't make sense. And if the people knew the real story about that as well, there were situations, it was just the birds, us buying back yearlings from people who got invested with us so that they didn't have to keep feeding them. And so we took them back, took on all the expenses of feeding them and caring for them while giving them the bill there was a bill with them that we would pay them when we could. And so it was just part of the program. But yes, they made it look like, I don't know, they misused that. And once again, deviating from the real plight that we're having here and creating more division, right? Division is the oldest tool in the toolbox. And while we're all fighting with each other, the big agencies get to just steamroll farmers and go do whatever they want, lose this momentum and not create the change that we also desperately deserve for generations to come.
Right. And your plight is representative of many people in Canada and what is happening to our rights and these unelected bureaucrats and the power that they have over Canadians when they wish to engage on that. So thank you for taking the time and talking about this. There's more we could talk about, but I don't want to waste any more time. I know you guys are genuinely concerned for the well-being, as always.
We really are.
Birds, no matter what you decide to do with them. And I know that you took very good care. I saw with my own eyes the difference that the birds looked when they were cared for you guys over the past months when I would visit compared to when the CFIA came.
Yeah.
It was night and day. Everybody
they are missed, and we're going to keep rooting for the time that when we get to be back with them and cut that yellow tape, because our hearts are with them, and we've fought for years for these animals, and we're going to keep fighting for them. And we are the biggest animal lovers you'll ever meet. And when you meet us, and hopefully one day those who are, they have questions about us, hopefully they'll get a chance to come meet us, because once you get to come be part of this and see these animals, a lot of people, they change their mind pretty quick.
At Rebel News, we fill the vital role of bringing you the other side of the story to what the state-backed media uses your tax dollars to report. If you appreciate all the efforts we've done to do that on this file, please share our work and consider supporting it via donations at SaveTheOstriches.com.